Hello, thank you for tuning into the War in Christmas Village channel. On today's episode, I'm going to discuss hit points, what they are mechanically, and what they represent in tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. First and foremost, hit points are not actual physical damage for your character. For something like, say, a door or a wagon or a piece of paper, that's a different situation and a different set of dynamics of hit points. But for your player character, hit points do not define the physical damage that your character can take. Let's not forget that your character can be coup de grace or even taken out in their sleep by a mere assassin's dagger. Hit points represent the resiliency of your character and the monsters that you play as a DM. Now, if we look at the player's handbook on page 12, there's a small little paragraph that defines what hit points are. And I find it's quite vague, so that's what the purpose of this video is about. Now let's keep in mind, hit points are different than hit die or hit dice. The two are related. Hit dice is how you determine your hit points, but that's not the scope of this discussion for this video. Page 12 of the player's handbook, there's a paragraph right here which defines what hit points are. Hit points are defined as how tough your character is in combat and other dangerous situations. That's pretty much all they give you. So the scope of this is to discuss what exactly are hit points. So hit points can be defined as a way that your character is able to avoid damage. Hit points are defined as could be defined as your exhaustion level or how your ability to avoid the damage. Think of combat like Kill Bill, for instance, if you've seen that movie. The character, the bride, that is played by Uma Thurman, takes a lot of abuse, yet she still survives. So I would classify her as having a lot of hit points. Since I thought the definition of hit points in the 5th editions of Dungeons and Dragons was a little bit on the lacking side and vague, I decided to pull out the AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, written by Gary Gygax from TSR. This is one of the books that I grew up with, playing within Dungeons and Dragons, and let's go ahead and take a little look at what they say for hit points. A typical man-at-arms can take about 5 hit points of damage before being killed. Let us suppose that a 10th level fighter has 55 hit points plus a bonus of 30 hit points for his constitution for a total of 85 hit points. Keep in mind, this is the different edition, so they're going to calculate hit points a little bit differently. This hit point total is the equivalent of about 18 hit dice for creatures, about what it would take to kill 4 huge war horses. It is ridiculous to assume that even a fantastic fighter can take that much punishment. The same holds true to a lesser extent for clerics, thieves, and other classes. Thus, the majority of hit points are symbolic of combat skill, luck, bestowed by supernatural powers and magical forces. So I'm going to say that again. Hit points are a combination of combat skill, luck, and magical forces. Now in 5th edition, it's been expanded upon a little bit to include, say, perhaps the exhaustion level of your character, or perhaps it's the resiliency your character has in situations that could do physical harm to that character. Hit points are a measurement which define how tough and resilient your character is at avoiding damage, exhaustion, as well as the willpower to continue on fighting. Let's not forget that even the mightiest of fighters can still be taken out in their sleep with just a mere dagger. In older Dungeons and Dragons, they had an option for the DM to use, in which case he or she would keep all of the player characters' hit points a secret and would say things to the player characters when they got damaged, like your character feels strong, or your character feels weak, or your character feels very fatigued. These are 3 different levels of basically how strong your character feels. That's an older way of playing, and I think it's a very creative way of playing, but it's not very common these days, but it doesn't mean that you still can't use that as a way of tracking your players' hit points if you so decide to do so. It adds a little bit more of a mystery, and it's harder for your players to metagame that way. It's up to you how you want to do it. Mechanically speaking, hit points are the numeric value that represent how much resiliency your character has before that last attack goes through and does some damage, possibly enough to incapacitate, knock out, or even kill your character. In 5th edition, when a character's hit points are reduced to 0, that player has to start rolling death saves for that character. In older editions, such as Basic, Expert, and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, a character was just flat out kaput and flatlined and deceased. I think in 3.5 and Pathfinder, the characters started getting saves. I never played 2nd edition and I never played 4th edition, so I don't really know how they dealt with 0 hit points in those editions. But there you go. I hope this video helped. Please hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell down below, so that way you'll be notified next time I upload a crafting tutorial, a battle report, or just do a little talking head series about some Dungeons & Dragons topics. Have a good one.